She was cornered, powerless, and seconds away from a violation she couldn't escape, until a black limousine glided to the curb, and one man stepped out with enough authority to rewrite her entire existence. Before we continue this story and want to see what happens next, please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comment where you are watching from. Your support helps us. After her third grueling cleaning shift of the day, Aisha Thompson faces what she's endured for weeks. Ronald Pierce, a wealthy executive who mistakes her vulnerability for permission. Trapped in an empty hallway with nowhere to run and too desperate to fight back, she's seconds from losing more than her dignity. What begins as the worst night of her life transforms when a stranger witnesses her terror and intervenes with chilling calm. Kong Min-jae's cold authority saves her, but his protection comes with an impossible offer that will pull Aisha into a world of criminal power, territorial wars, and dangerous loyalty, where accepting help means accepting a life she can never leave, and where refusing means staying powerless forever. Aisha's hands trembled as she spread the bills across their second-hand table, the numbers blurring together in the dim light of their cramped studio apartment. Rent, utilities, Imani's textbooks, the community college tuition payment looming in 3 weeks. No matter how she shuffled the stack, the math refused to work. We could defer another semester, Imani offered quietly from the threadbare couch, her nursing textbook balanced on her knees. No. The word came out sharper than Aisha intended. She softened her voice. You're not putting your life on hold because of me. Because of men like Pierce. The thought arrived unbidden, accompanied by phantom sensations, his cologne in her nostrils, his hand gripping her arm, the cold wall against her spine. He wasn't the first. There had been Mr. Chun at the restaurant, pawing at her while she cleared tables. David at the hotel, cornering her in empty rooms. Years of swallowing her voice, of making herself invisible, of enduring because she couldn't afford to fight back. Until last night, when someone finally fought for her. Min-jae's business card sat on the corner of the table, heavy stock paper that felt expensive between her fingers. The address meant nothing to her, but when she'd looked it up online, the photos showed iron gates and manicured grounds in the city's most exclusive neighborhood. The kind of place where people like her only entered through service entrances. The GPS guided her through streets that grew progressively cleaner, the buildings taller and more imposing. When the estate finally appeared, Aisha's breath caught. This wasn't just wealth. This was power made visible. Security cameras tracked her approach. A guard in a pristine suit checked her ID against a tablet before the gates whispered open. The main house rose before her like something from a different world, all clean lines and floor-to-ceiling windows that reflected the morning sun. A man waited at the entrance, younger than Min-jae, but carrying the same controlled intensity. His dark eyes assessed her with professional efficiency. Miss Thompson, I'm Jae-sung, Mr. Kang's second-in-command. Please, follow me. The interior was museum quiet, her worn sneakers silent on marble floors. Min-jae sat behind a desk of dark wood in a study lined with books in Korean and English, looking exactly as she remembered, composed, dangerous, untouchable. He gestured to the chair across from him. Thank you for coming. I'll be direct. He slid a folder across the desk. Head of household staff. You would oversee domestic operations, coordinate with security, maintain discretion regarding all household matters. The salary is listed on page 3. Aisha opened the folder. The number stared back at her. Impossible. More than she made in a year across all 3 jobs combined. Why me? Her voice came out steadier than she felt. I need someone trustworthy. Someone who understands the value of loyalty and silence. You need safety and resources. His gaze held hers without wavering. This is business, Miss Thompson. Nothing more complicated than that. But it was complicated. Every instinct screamed warning. About the locked rooms Jae-sung had passed too quickly, about the men she'd glimpsed through doorways who moved like soldiers, about the unspoken rules hovering beneath Min-jae's formal offer. When would I start? She heard herself ask. Immediately. Jae-sung will show you to your quarters in the staff wing. You'll meet the household team this afternoon. Aisha thought of Imani's tuition. of Pierce's face when Min Jae had intervened, of never having to make herself small and silent again. I accept. Aisha learned the rhythm of the household within days. Min Jae rose at 6, drank his coffee black while reading newspapers in 3 languages, and left for his office by 7:30. She kept his schedules synchronized across devices, managed calls that came at all hours, and ensured his suits were pressed to perfection. The work itself was familiar. Executives were executives, whether in Lagos or Seoul. What was unfamiliar were the locked rooms on the 3rd floor. The men who visited at odd hours, their jackets cut to accommodate the weight at their shoulders. The conversations in rapid Korean that died the moment she approached with tea or documents. "You're very efficient," Min Jae said on her 5th day, not looking up from the contract he was reviewing. "The agency chose well." "Thank you, sir." Aisha set down his lunch, Mrs. Kim's bulgogi, precisely as he preferred it. "The 3 o'clock meeting with the construction company representatives has been moved to 4. Traffic concerns." He nodded, making a note. Their interactions were professional, transactional. He never stood too close, never let his eyes linger. After her experience with Mr. Chun, she recognized this as something rare, respect. Mrs. Kim found her in the kitchen that evening, chopping vegetables for staff dinner. The elderly cook's hands moved with practiced ease, decades of muscle memory guiding her knife. "You see things," Mrs. Kim said in careful English. It wasn't a question. Aisha kept chopping. "I see what my work requires me to see." "Good." The old woman's blade struck the cutting board in steady rhythm. "See nothing else. Speak nothing. Serve with excellence. This house has rules older than you." That night, Aisha was working late in the study, organizing files, when raised voices drew her to the window. The garden lights illuminated Min Jae and another man, younger, aggressive, gesticulating wildly. She couldn't hear the words, but she understood the body language of confrontation. Min Jae moved like water, fluid and inevitable. One moment the man was shouting. The next he was on his knees, Min Jae's hand gripping his collar, his voice low and deadly calm. The violence was surgical, controlled, a lesson, not rage. When Min Jae released him, the man scrambled away, and Min Jae straightened his tie as if nothing had happened. Aisha stepped back from the window, her pulse quickening. She'd suspected, of course. The locked rooms, the careful men, the weight of unspoken things. But suspicion and certainty were different countries. She was working for a criminal, a man who solved problems with his hands when words failed, but also a man who paid fairly, who treated his staff with distant professionalism, who seemed to operate by rules even if they weren't the law's rules. In the morning, she would serve his coffee, keep his schedule, see nothing, speak nothing. Excellence had its own language, and she was fluent. The text came at 2 a.m., jolting Aisha from restless sleep. An unknown number, but she recognized the arrogance in every word. "You think you're safe now? Enjoy your Korean fantasy while it lasts." Her hands were shaking when she showed Min Jae the phone at breakfast. He read the message twice, his expression hardening into something cold and distant. "Alexander Pierce," he said finally, setting down his coffee. "Not just a businessman with bad habits. He runs operations across Southeast Asia, trafficking routes disguised as legitimate shipping contracts." Trafficking. The word tasted like ash. People, mostly women and children. Min Jae's voice was flat, matter of fact. "He uses corporate structures to move them. Very efficient. Very profitable." He paused. "And completely unacceptable." Aisha stared at him. "You're a criminal. He's a criminal. What's the difference?" "The difference," Min Jae said quietly, "is that I have lines I don't cross. He doesn't." He stood, straightening his cuffs. "Jae-sung will assign you additional security. Pierce is vindictive, and in his mind, I took something that belonged to him. I don't belong to anyone. I know." He met her eyes directly, but he doesn't see it that way. By evening, 2 men shadowed her movements, discreet but present. She hated it. Hated feeling like property being guarded, like an asset rather than a person. Min Jae found her in the study after dinner, staring at her phone. At the photo she kept as her wallpaper, Zainab, grinning in her school uniform, gap-toothed and bright-eyed. Your sister, he asked. She nodded, surprised he'd noticed. Surprised he'd asked. She wants to be a doctor, Aisha said softly. Every penny I send goes to her school fees, her books. She's brilliant, top of her class. You sacrifice much for her. She's the only family I have left. Aisha locked her phone. Our parents died when she was 8. Someone had to. Be the adult, Min Jae finished. Something flickered across his face. Recognition, perhaps. Understanding. My sister raised me after our father was killed. I was 7. She was 15. The confession hung between them, unexpected and humanizing. Jae-sung appeared in the doorway, his expression grave. Boss. Pierce made contact through the usual channels. He's not pleased about the Melbourne situation. I imagine not. Min Jae turned back to Aisha. Pierce won't forget you. In his mind, I stole his property. It's personal now. I'm not. I know what you are, Min Jae interrupted. And as long as you are in my household, you are under my protection. That's not negotiable. It's not about ownership. It's about honor. Aisha held his gaze, seeing something unexpected there. Sincerity, perhaps. A code that made sense in his world, if not in hers. Understood, sir. He nodded once. Good. Now go rest. Tomorrow will be complicated. The dining room glowed with understated elegance. Crystal and silk. The table set for 12. Aisha moved through the space with practiced invisibility, ensuring wine glasses stayed filled and courses appeared with seamless timing. Mrs. Kim had outdone herself, each dish a masterpiece of presentation and flavor. Min Jae sat at the head of the table, conducting business in Korean with men whose expensive suits couldn't quite hide their dangerous edges. She recognized the dance, power dressed in civility, territorial lines drawn with wine and careful words. The doors opened without warning. Alexander Pierce entered like he owned the room, his smile sharp and predatory. The conversation died. Min Jae's expression didn't change, but Aisha felt the temperature drop. Calm, Pierce said, his voice carrying false joviality. Heard you were entertaining. Thought I'd pay my respects. Uninvited. Min Jae's tone was glacial. Oh, I think we're past formalities. Pierce's eyes found Aisha as she poured water at the far end of the table. His smile widened. I see you're enjoying your new acquisition. Tell me, does she perform other duties as well, or just serving drinks? The room went utterly still. Aisha's hand steadied on the pitcher through sheer force of will. She'd heard worse in her life. Degradation was a language she understood. But here, in this room full of dangerous men, the words carried different weight. Min Jae stood slowly, setting down his chopsticks with deliberate care. When he spoke, the Korean that flowed from his lips was soft, almost conversational. But every man at the table straightened, eyes widening. One of the older associates inhaled sharply. Pierce's smile faltered. English, Kong, he demanded. So your pet can understand. Jae-sung appeared at Aisha's elbow, guiding her firmly toward the kitchen. She went, but not before seeing Min Jae's expression, cold fury wrapped in absolute control. Mrs. Kim pressed tea into her hands 20 minutes later. The Australian left, she said quietly. Escorted. Jae-sung translated what Min Jae had said. Insult what is mine again, and you will learn the true cost of disrespect. I will take everything you value, piece by piece, until you understand the difference between property and protection. The dinner continued in tense silence. Aisha served dessert with steady hands, but she felt the shift. She wasn't just staff anymore. She was a symbol, a line drawn in territorial sand. Min Jae found her in the study after the last guest departed. He looked tired, a rare crack in his composed facade. This has escalated beyond business, he said without preamble. Pierce will retaliate. Not against me directly, against what he perceives I value. He paused. I need your permission to protect your sister. Security at her school, monitoring her movements. It's intrusive, but necessary. Aisha's throat tightened. Zainab? She's 14. She has nothing to do with. She has everything to do with it. She's your vulnerability. His eyes were serious. And Pierce knows it. The photographs spread across Min Jae's desk like evidence at a crime scene. Zainab, Imani, as she preferred now, her grown-up name, leaving school, buying lunch at the corner store, walking home with friends. Each image time-stamped, professionally shot with telephoto lenses. Yesterday, Min Jae said quietly. Pierce's surveillance team. They're mapping her routine. Aisha's vision tunneled. She gripped the desk edge, forcing herself to breathe. She's just a child. She's leverage. Min Jae gathered the photos, returning them to a folder. I can provide protection in Lagos, local security, monitoring. But the safest option is to bring her here. Private security, controlled environment, education continuation. No. The word came out strangled. I kept her away from this. From everything I had to do, everything I had to survive. She's supposed to be clean, separate. She's not separate anymore. Min Jae's voice held uncomfortable truth. Pierce made her part of this the moment he perceived her as your weakness. The call to Imani that evening required every ounce of composure Aisha possessed. She sat in her room, staring at her sister's face on the video screen. So young, so trusting. I have an opportunity, Aisha said carefully. My employer offers housing for family members. Better schools here in Seoul, full scholarship. Security. She swallowed. I need you safe with me. Imani's eyes narrowed with 14-year-old suspicion. What aren't you telling me? That I miss you. That I want you close. Both true. Both incomplete. Imani arrived 3 days later, wide-eyed at the estate's elegance, chattering about the flight and the strange food and how everything looked like a Korean drama. But Aisha caught her sister's sideways glances at the security cameras, the men with careful eyes, the locked rooms. Aisha, Imani whispered that first night, curled on her sister's bed. What kind of house is this? A safe one, Aisha replied, smoothing Imani's hair. That's all you need to know. But the lie tasted bitter. Min Jae found her on the garden terrace past midnight, staring at nothing. You cannot protect her by keeping her in the dark, he said, standing beside her. Ignorance is vulnerability. If she doesn't understand the danger, she cannot recognize threats. She's 14. I was 7 when my sister explained that our father's murder meant certain people would always see us as targets. His voice carried old pain. She taught me to recognize danger, to move carefully, to survive. I hated her for it then. Now I understand she gave me the only gift that mattered, awareness. Aisha turned to look at him, seeing past the criminal, the boss, the dangerous man with controlled violence in his hands. Seeing instead someone who understood the weight of protecting what you love. I've trapped her here, she whispered. You've given her a chance to survive. Min Jae met her eyes. There's a difference. 2 months transformed the estate from a place of careful navigation into something almost resembling home. Imani thrived in her new international school, her Korean improving daily. She'd stopped asking questions about the locked rooms, though Aisha suspected her sister understood more than she pretended. The rhythms became familiar. Min Jae's morning coffee, the afternoon meetings Aisha coordinated with effortless precision, the quiet evenings when the household settled into comfortable routine. She no longer flinched at the men with shoulder holsters. They were simply part of the landscape now. Jae-sung's steady presence, the rotating security detail, the weight of protection wrapped around them all. You disagree, Min Jae said one evening, setting down a contract he'd been reviewing. Aisha looked up from her tablet. Sir, your expression. You think the terms are unfavorable. She hesitated, then spoke carefully. The percentage split leaves you vulnerable if shipping costs increase. A tiered structure would provide more flexibility. He studied her for a long moment, then smiled, rare and genuine. You're right. Draft the revision. It became their pattern. Tea after difficult meetings, Min Jae soliciting her perspective on negotiations and logistics. He valued intelligence, she discovered. Respected competence regardless of its source. The self-defense lessons were Jae-sung's idea, but Min Jae approved. 3 times a week, Aisha and Imani trained in the estate's gym, basic strikes, escape techniques, situational awareness. Imani took to it with fierce determination, channeling her teenage energy into learning how to break holds and create distance. You're teaching her to survive, Min Jae observed, watching from the doorway one afternoon. You said ignorance was vulnerability, Aisha replied, adjusting Imani's stance. Knowledge is armor. The garden party was Min Jae's attempt at normalcy. Associates and their families, spring flowers blooming in careful arrangements, children playing while adults conducted business disguised as socializing. Aisha wore a simple dress instead of her usual professional attire, feeling oddly exposed without the uniform of competence. You look different, Min Jae said, finding her by the koi pond. Less like my assistant. More like yourself. Is there a difference anymore? He considered this seriously. I hope so. I would hate to think this life has consumed you entirely. Why did you intervene? The question escaped before she could stop it. That night in Melbourne, you could have let Pierce. I recognized something in you. Min Jae's voice was quiet, intimate. You refused to break. Even terrified, even trapped, you kept your dignity. That's rare. Worth protecting. The space between them contracted. Aisha felt the shift, the professional boundary dissolving like sugar in tea. This is dangerous, she whispered. Everything worthwhile is. The kiss was tentative, question and answer both. His hand gentle on her jaw, her fingers curling into his shirt. When they separated, the world had rearranged itself into something new and precarious. In the garden, Imani laughed at something Jae-sung said. Cherry blossoms drifted on the evening breeze. For one perfect moment, everything felt possible. Neither of them saw the camera lens watching from the tree line beyond the wall. The call came at 7:42 a.m. Jae-sung's voice, tight with controlled panic. The girl is gone. Aisha's coffee cup shattered on the marble floor. The world contracted to those 4 words, each one a knife finding soft tissue. Security detail? Min Jae's question was ice over fury. Disabled. Professional work. They took her from the east entrance during the morning rush. Jae-sung's jaw clenched. We have 2 men down, non-fatal. The video arrived 10 minutes later. Imani, blindfolded and bound in what looked like a warehouse, her school uniform torn at the shoulder, and Pierce's face filling the frame, his smile triumphant. What's yours is mine to take, Kong. Let's discuss terms for her return. Shall we say, everything you value? Aisha couldn't breathe, couldn't think past the image of her sister, her brilliant, trusting sister who'd believed Aisha could keep her safe. The sister she'd brought into this darkness. I'll kill him. Her voice sounded distant, detached. I'll kill him myself. No. Min Jae's hand closed around her wrist, firm but not cruel. You'll get her back. But not with rage. With precision. The estate transformed into a war room. Maps spread across tables, security footage analyzed frame by frame, contacts activated across 3 countries. Min Jae moved through it all with lethal efficiency, his earlier warmth replaced by something cold and purposeful. Here. Jae-sung stabbed a finger at the screen. The van took this route. But look, they knew about the traffic camera blind spot on the corner. Knew which entrance had the weakest coverage during shift change. Inside information, Min Jae said flatly. The betrayal cut deeper than Imani's kidnapping. Someone in the household, someone they'd trusted, had sold them to Pierce. Aisha felt the foundation of safety crumble beneath her feet. They found him in the staff quarters. Young Soo, a junior security guard, his room containing a burner phone and $20,000 in crisp bills. Min Jae's interrogation was brief and efficient. Young Soo broke within minutes, sobbing about his gambling debts and Pierce's promises. About the detailed information he'd provided, Imani's schedule, security rotations, camera placements. Please, Young Soo begged. I didn't know he'd actually. The gunshot was loud in the confined space. Aisha flinched, but didn't look away. This was the world she lived in now. Actions had consequences, written in blood. Min Jae holstered his weapon with mechanical precision. Dispose of it, he told Jae-sung. Then assemble the team. Full tactical gear. The warehouse is in Incheon, Jae-sung said, studying satellite imagery. Industrial district. Pierce will have significant security. I'm coming. Aisha's voice was steel. She's my sister. I'm coming. Min Jae turned to her, and for a moment she saw something like admiration in his eyes. This isn't serving tea or managing schedules. People will die tonight. I understand. If I give an order, You follow it exactly. No hesitation. No emotion. His gaze held hers. Can you do that? Aisha thought of Amani, blindfolded and terrified. Thought of every compromise she'd made to survive. Every piece of herself she'd surrendered to build a better life for her sister. Yes. Min Jae nodded once. Then suit up. We leave in 30 minutes. The warehouse district sprawled in industrial darkness, sodium lights casting sickly orange pools across cracked pavement. Min Jae's team moved like shadows, 6 men in tactical gear, communicating through hand signals and earpieces. Aisha wore black, pepper spray holstered at her hip, her heart a drum against her ribs. Stay behind Jae-sung, Min Jae instructed, his voice clinical through the calm. When we breach, you hold position until cleared. Understood. Understood. The entry was surgical. Jae-sung's suppressed shots took down 2 exterior guards before they could raise alarms. The door gave way to a breaching charge, and the team flowed inward like water finding channels. Practiced, efficient, lethal. Aisha followed exactly as instructed, her breath controlled, her focus narrowed to the man in front of her. Gunfire cracked in short bursts. Bodies fell. She stepped over them without looking down, every instinct screaming but her discipline holding firm. The main floor opened into a vast space. Shipping containers, industrial equipment, and there, center stage like a theatrical production, Imani bound to a chair, Pierce standing behind her with casual ownership. Calm. Pierce's voice echoed. Right on schedule. I'd say predictable, but I appreciate punctuality. 4 men flanked him, weapons raised. Min Jae's team fanned out, creating a standoff measured in heartbeats and trigger pressure. Let her go, Min Jae said flatly. This ends tonight. Does it? Pierce's hand rested on Imani's shoulder, making the girl flinch. I think we're just getting started. I think. His eyes found Aisha. Ah, there she is. Come here, sweetheart. Let's discuss terms properly this time. Aisha felt the weight of every degradation Pierce represented. Every man who'd treated her as commodity, as something to be used and discarded. She'd spent years making herself small, invisible, safe through submission. She was done being small. No. She stepped forward, into the light, her voice steady. You want to talk? We talk here. Pierce's smile faltered. Still playing brave? That's adorable. You are nothing, Aisha said clearly. You never were. You traffic in human misery because you're too weak for honest power. You take what doesn't belong to you because you can't build anything of value. You're a parasite wearing an expensive suit. The warehouse held its breath. You dare. Min Jae moved like lightning. 3 shots, precision placement. Pierce's guards dropped before their fingers found triggers. Pierce himself stumbled backward, reaching for his weapon, but Jae-sung was already there, kicking it away. Min Jae crossed the space in long strides, his gun trained unwavering on Pierce's chest. You made this personal. Now it ends. The shot was final, absolute. Aisha ran to Imani, cutting through her bonds with shaking hands. Her sister collapsed into her arms, sobbing, and Aisha held her like she'd held her through childhood nightmares, fierce and protective. I've got her, Min Jae said, lifting Imani with surprising gentleness. Aisha, rear guard. We move now. She drew her pepper spray, following them out through smoke and darkness, her sister safe in Min Jae's arms. The estate felt different in dawn light, safer, solid, real. Imani slept in Aisha's bed, curled tight like she used to as a child, her breathing finally even after hours of tears and trembling. Mrs. Kim had brought warm milk and gentle Korean words that needed no translation. Aisha stood on the terrace, watching Seoul wake beneath a sky painted in pastels. Her hands had stopped shaking an hour ago. Her mind was still catching up to what her body had done. The warehouse, the confrontation, the blood. You didn't hesitate. Min Jae's voice came from behind her, quiet in the morning stillness. When it mattered, you were steel. I was terrified. Steel can be terrified and still hold. He moved beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. When he took your sister, I understood something. You are not just under my protection. You are mine, as I am yours. The words hung between them, more binding than any contract. I'm a criminal's woman now, Aisha said softly. That's what they'll call me. Is that what you are? She considered this, the journey from invisible maid to woman standing in Minjae's world as an equal. The power she discovered wasn't just reflected from him. It was hers, forged in survival and refined through choice. I'm a woman who chose where to stand, she said finally. And who to stand beside. His hand found hers, fingers intertwining. Then stand with me. Not behind, not beneath. With. Imani found them at breakfast, moving carefully like her body still remembered fear. Aisha pulled her close, and Minjae excused himself with unexpected grace, giving them privacy. I need to tell you the truth, Aisha began. About Minjae. About what he does. He's a gangster, Imani said simply. I'm 14, not stupid. And you're okay with that? Imani was quiet for a long moment, picking at her rice. He saved me. He protects you. He treats his people with honor. She looked up, her eyes older than they'd been a week ago. The men who took me, they were criminals too, but they had no honor. There's a difference. Yes, Aisha whispered. There is. The dinner party 3 weeks later was different from the last. When Minjae introduced her to the assembled associates, his hand rested at the small of her back, possessive but not controlling, proud without being performative. My partner, he said in Korean, then English. Aisha, she speaks for me in all matters. The room absorbed this declaration, understanding shifting across faces. She was no longer staff, no longer invisible. She met their gazes steadily, her voice clear when she spoke, her opinions valued when she offered them. That night, they stood together at the bedroom window, soul glittering below like scattered diamonds. Minjae's arms circled her waist. Imani slept safely down the hall. The estate surrounded them with walls and security, yes, but also with something she'd never expected to find. Home. Not escape, but arrival. No regrets. Minjae asked quietly. Aisha thought of the girl who'd scrubbed floors in Lagos, who'd endured Chin's hands, who'd believed survival meant making herself small. That girl was gone, transformed into someone who'd faced down her nightmares and emerged with her own power intact. None, she said, and meant it completely.